I'll learn to appreciate Zoom, but right now I hate it.
Hi, Mimi.
Okay, last week we completed a 3-part study together of the story of the mekoshesh, it seemed the one who was gathering wood, and what we make of that story and who was he. Sort of in our last bit of study, we saw how at least one midrashic trend, beginning with Rabbi Akiva already, helps us rehabilitate this individual to a pretty fine person. He's like, in the end, he's slavchad. This is the only sin he ever did. He did this sin to help let people learn the parameters of good and bad behavior. And we think pretty highly of the guy. But that is an interesting extreme. On the other hand, you have the Ibn Ezra's opening read, which is one that it's hard to avoid, which says that story is brought as an example of someone in a high-handed way. In a high-handed way, sought to defy God. So it's a harsh story, and the person is to be condemned, right? So now we continue. That story ends, and then picks up with the following. That's right. Vayomer Adonai Moshe lemor, and God said to Moshe, saying, "Daber b'nei Yisrael v'amar talihem v'asu lahem tzitzit." Speak to the children of Israel and say to them that they should fashion themselves tzitzit, fringes, akanfei vigdehem, on the corners of their garments, lidorotam, throughout all the generations. V'natnu al tzitzit hakanaf petil tochelet, and they should put on the fringes of the corner of their garment a petil tochelet, a tochelet colored fringe. Okay? V'hayalachem letzitzit, and that will be for you as tzitzit. Or itemoto, and you will see it. Uzachartem kol mitzvot Adonai v'asitem otam, and you'll carry out all of the commandments of God, and you shall perform them. And you shall not wander, lust after your hearts and your eyes, which you have already harloted after. Okay, lust after. In order that you should remember and perform all of my commandments, and you should be holy to your God. I am God, your Lord, who took you out of the land of Egypt, right? To be for you a God. I am the Lord your God. All right, that's our text. It's familiar to us, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Why is it familiar to us?
It's from the Shema.
It's the end of the Shema. We say it morning and night every single day. So it should be very well familiar to us indeed. So let's just start from the opening question. What questions might you have on this text? Should I make it a little larger? Would that be easier if I make it a little larger?
We can expand it ourselves.
Okay, I made it a little.
On your phones, you just use 2 fingers and pull it out.
If you're on your phones, that's true.
On the iPad also.
I made it larger right here. Okay, so what questions do we have about this text? Just questions, no answers or speeches.
Well, the obvious one is why now?
What?
Why now? Once more, we want to ask questions about placement. We have a portion of Shalach deals with the spies, then the people who try to break ranks. Then an interesting set of mitzvot that God gives about things that will happen in Israel. Then the story of the mekoshesh, and then we kind of conclude it with this. What does this have to do with anything? Yes, good. What other questions do we have?
All right. Why call them tzitzit? You asked it.
And why blue?
What's the blue thing? Good. Why call them tzitzit? Is that a word that we should know? It happens that elsewhere in the Torah discusses the same mitzvah, and it says gedilim ta'aselacha, right? You should make gedilim. So it's a different term. So what is this word tzitzit compared to that? It's obviously repeated 3 times here. Yes, right. What else we got?
Well, to go more deeply into it. Why the tzitzit? Why on the corners of your garments? You know, the particular way that they're, you know, that they're tied and the knots.
Okay,
can-
but those aren't questions about the text. Those are questions you might have about halakha, right? Because the text doesn't tell you much about the way they're tied.
Right.
Fringes,
Yeah. So what? So and what does the Torah tell you the role that they will play?
to remind you of God.
I'll go say it again.
To remind you of God and who He is.
Remind you of the
Of
commandments.
the
You'll see them, and you'll be reminded of the commandments of God, right? So how does that work? How does seeing them remind you of the commandments of God? We need to understand that, right?
And why them and not any other symbol?
Okay, good. Keep on going. Any other questions we have? We're good. We're good with the questions.
Why be reminded about going astray and lusting after?
Why? Well, what's the fixation? Maybe can I rephrase it that way? What's the fixation the Torah has on this going astray and lusting after other things? Yeah, good. Somebody's squeaking a lot. Try not to squeak.
I think it's Mimi.
Yeah, that's Bam Bam.
Oh, that's your dog. Okay. Okay. So let's start. We'll start with this text over here in the Midrash Lekach Tov, which is interested in, we're starting with the question why it's placed here. Okay. So Hedda, how about you?
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm still eating. Why was this section of Tzitzit linked to the section on the
Mekoshesh.
because they said to the mekoshesh, why did you desecrate the Sabbath? Didn't you hear Shemot 31? Those who desecrate it shall surely die. He said, I heard it, but I forgot it. God then said to
All right,
Moshe,
firstly, is that believable to you?
That is opposite the conclusion that we heard last week, where he knew he was.
He knew very well what he was doing,
he was
right?
sacrificing himself.
And even without that opinion, we actually learned that with the other midrash, which actually makes very clear that if they warn you about doing an avera, and they had to make it clear that you fully understand that what you're doing is forbidden before they can punish you. So okay, fine. But this midrash clearly takes a different path and says at least he came up with a lame excuse. I forgot that Jewish law. So then God said to Moshe, go on, Hedda.
no, wait a minute, I'm sorry.
I took another bite. Okay.
Yeah, I took another bite while you were talking.
Okay.
God then said to Moshe, speak to the children of Israel and say to them that they shall make themselves tzitzits. Tzitzits is a term of sign of a marker, so that Israel will remember the commandments. And so it is said, and you shall see it and remember all the commandments of God.
Okay, it doesn't tell us how it works, but it does say why is this placed after the mekoshesh?
Is yet another reminder.
Yet another reminder. Now, that doesn't help a person remember a specific mitzvah. It just might remind a person to do what?
To think of all the mitzvahs.
All right, not to play around with the mitzvahs that he knows, right? Don't transgress the mitzvahs that you know about. Doesn't really help us too much on that other question so much. Okay, but okay. Let's see how the Yalkut Shimoni, that's over here, gets a little bit more specific about its relationship. So when do you want to read that? I'm just going to kind of go down, at least my grid.
Okay. It was taught in the school of Eliyahu. God said to Moshe, this man, the mekoshesh, desecrated the Sabbath. Moshe said before him, Master of the universe, you know that each day a person has tefillin on his head, tefillin on his arm, and he sees them and changes his mind about sinning. Now, on the Sabbath day, when he doesn't have tefillin on him, this man transgressed the Sabbath. God said to him, go forth and choose them something that they will practice on Shabbat and Yom Tov.
What's going on here? This is a different angle of the same type of topic, but a different angle on it. What is this midrash saying?
Well, you wear tzitzits on Shabbos and Yom Tov, so, but you don't wear tefillin.
You know where tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov. By the way, does anybody know the reason why tefillin were not worn on Shabbat?
Isn't it muksa?
So you don't carry it.
Yes, it's muktzah only because you can't wear them. It's right. Muktzah always means something that has no purpose for you becomes muktzah and you can't move it. But if it has purpose for you, you could. So why is it muktzah? Because we can't wear it. Why don't we wear it? So here it's actually because the teaching is that Shabbat is called an oat, a sign of God's covenant with us, right? And the tefillin is called an oat, right? It's a sign on your arm and your forehead. So the argument is that one oat cancels out the other oat. If you have a sign of Shabbos, but to God's relationship with you, you don't need the sign of the tefillin. So that's why you don't wear it. But that's fascinating, right? Here you are on the Shabbos, and you're completely missing the sign of Shabbos because you're transgressing, right? And you need another sign, but we've already said, oh, well, we don't need another sign because you can't wear tefillin, so no tefillin. So instead we said, wear a different thing that you can't, or something that is allowed to be worn all the time, and that is the tzitzit.
But you wear tzitzit during the week also.
Yeah. But you need, so just that a person should avoid, a person has reminders during the week, doesn't have a reminder on Shabbos. So on Shabbos he might transgress. So make sure you have a sign on your body not to transgress on Shabbos. And that would be the tzitzit. Okay, but it's a little circular, right? Because again, let you wear the tefillin then. So why you can't wear tefillin? Because you don't need, because you already have a sign of the Sabbath, which is good enough. But obviously the sign of the Sabbath hasn't held you back from doing whatever sin you're about to do. So, but
why two signs during the week and only one on Shabbos?
Well, tzitzis are not called a sign. This is just an obligation. Tefillin are called in the Torah an oat. So they just said one oat doesn't. There's a third oat, which is bris milah, and that we actually say the oath of brit milah overrides the oath of Shabbat, and therefore, what do?
We do brit milah on Shabbos.
You do brit milah on Shabbat, right? It actually overrides the halacha of against causing a blemish on Shabbos. Okay, so this is the first approach that suggests that it's placed here specifically in relation to the mekoshesh, and we have a few arguments for that. At the very end of our session, probably the next session, we'll see a different version of this, which is a book-ending version, and then we'll see a third version once we begin the portion of Korach, which is going to see a different relationship and why it's placed here. Okay, I'm sorry. I keep on knocking on my wires. I'm sorry. Okay. So,
Excuse me, Rabbi. I don't have the paper on my screen that I could read it. Why would that be?
Well, I did put it in front of you. Do you have? What are you on? A computer or on a phone?
It's an iPad.
It's an iPad. That's strange. I did I
have it on my iPad.
Yeah, I did a screen sharing. I can also do this. I can download it, and you can try to open it as a file. Would that be good?
You know what? I'll just listen because I had it before. I don't have it now, but don't call on me because I can't read it.
Okay. Sometimes, let me do this. I'm gonna actually stop and restart it. You might see it again because you might have pushed a button at the top that says that to ignore the screen share. Let's try this again. Hi, everybody. We're gonna try this again. How about now?
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, good. So
I got it.
let's figure out. Somebody asked the word before, like, what does this word tzitzit mean? I mentioned that there is the other term that's used, which is gedilim elsewhere. What is it about this word tzitzit that we're supposed to derive from? Let's take a look at these two teachings in Rashi. So let's see. Amy, you read for us? I mean, Wendy, you read for us already? Yes. So, Rick, how about you? I'm moving down my Hollywood squares here.
Under Rashi.
Oh, why they call them Rashi? Oh, here.
Here we go.
And make them a fringe. It is called tzitzit, which means curled threads, due to the threads that hang down from it. Similar Similarly, and he caught me by my curls of my head. The word denotes something twisted as threads or curls.
Okay, so the first interpretation says that tzitzit is what kind of does what? What it describes, as is used elsewhere, the twisty things that you have on your corners, whether you're a payas, which is basically what that verse seems to describe, right? Or in this case, twisted things at the corners of your garment. Okay, another explanation. Go ahead.
Another explanation is it is called tzitzit because of the command associated with it, and you shall look at it. Similarly, from the lattice, the word therefore denotes something that is looked at.
Looking, meitzitz, lehatzitz in Hebrew means to be staring through. I don't think it's a very good translation. Meitzitz minacharakim means to peer through the lattice work. That's what the verse means in Shir HaShirim. So it has to do with staring at something.
Peak.
Peek, P-E-E-K. Yeah, good. Right? So tell me, so what does this then want to say? What's the mitzvah associated with this? What? What does the Torah say you should do?
Look at it.
Look at it.
So they're called tzitzit, which means basically things you stare at, things that you look at, you keep on taking a peek at. So that's a very interesting. Like two different readings. That one says it has to do with corner, twisty things on corners, and one says it has to do with staring at it, and they both are reasonable arguments, right? Let's take a look at the other teaching of the Rashbam. I got to move you guys over.
Where are we?
This is the Rashbam. And yes, you see that? Mimi, you want to read the Rashbam for us?
I'm just looking.
Where?
I've highlighted. Tzitzit,
Yeah,
the word
yeah,
tzitzit
yeah.
means.
The word tzitzit means one thing in verse 38 and another in verse 39. In verse 38, it means a group of hanging threads, as in the phrase from Yecheskel 8:3, he grabbed me by the hairs, the tzitzit of my head. However, in verse 39, the meaning is different.
Vayalachem tzitzit.
Vayalachem letzitzit. The tzitzit mentioned, you just moved it.
Yeah.
They'll be.
I missed it.
The tzitzit mentioned, verse 38, shall be for you as something to look at because you will see it. The word tzitzit in verse 39 should be connected to the idea of seeing.
Okay.
So also in Shir Shirim, hearing, mitzitz through the lattice. So I found also in the Sifrei.
Right. So what the Rashbam does is actually say both interpretations are correct, and the Torah actually knows that you're going to think of both words. And so we'll start off that it should be right. You start off with tzitzit, the fringy things in your corners, and then they should become something that you stare at. Okay, fine. So that is number one. So you have tzitzit and tzitzit, and then there is the additional discussion, and we're going to take a little peek into that discussion, then we'll come back to other stuff. So, right, I'm sorry. On the tzitzit of your corners, you should place a patil techelet, a thread of techelet. So we presume that what is the rest of the tzitzit going to be? Yes, techelet or not techelet? It's not techelet. So what's not techelet?
White.
Something which hasn't been colored at all, right? That's what presumably. So you have uncolored threads, which would probably then be kind of, ivory colored, whatever, wool kind of, that hasn't been bleached is kind of ivory colored, and a thread of techelet. So what is techelet is the question. So take a look at Rashi, and then the Gemara Menachot, and then we'll look at something else. So what does Rashi say?
Purple.
Sam, you want to read for us?
Sure. Techelet, blue, purple. It is the blue dye obtained from a type of chilatzon.
Type of chilazon. Okay, read the Gemara if you would as well.
The sages taught this hilazon, which is the source of the sky blue dye used in ritual fringes, has the following characteristics. Its body resembles the sea, its form resembles that of a fish, it emerges once in 70 years, and with its blood one dyes wool sky blue for ritual fringes. It is scarce, therefore it is expensive.
So now we know what it is, right? It's pretty clear. The Talmud's told us everything we need to know to figure out what the chelet is. Especially that it comes out once in 70 years. It's like the cicadas, but even worse, right? They're even less frequent. I don't know what it means to say ole achad l'shivim shana. What does it mean it comes up? But like, there's no way that someone actually just reading this Gemara could conclude what this thing is. Like, oh, here are 5 descriptions. Yeah, I got it. I know what it is. So you have to have some familiarity with a lot of things in order to come to a conclusion. So, but what we do know is this, that the chelet, according to this, can't just be something that you mix around on your own in a lab. And more specifically, that like where did most dyes come from?
Plants.
All the dyes came from plants, most of them. Sometimes they came from animals, right? But most of the dyes came from plants. And it happens that that the chelet is pretty much an indigo blue. It's probably pretty accurate, right? So there are my friend who is an expert in chelet has an indigo book on his coffee table at home, just so you could like learn a lot about indigo, Levi's jeans and everything else. But there is a version of it which is pretty close to the color, and it's a plant product. It's absolutely not kosher to be used for techelating your tzitzis. It's not acceptable because it has to come from a chilazon, which we're told has a body resembling the sea, a form resembling of a fish. It comes out once in 70 years, and with its blood, which probably doesn't have to mean blood, but it has to mean something that oozes out of it. You make this stuff. Okay? So, here's my question for you.
How can they do it today?
Did any of you have Zaydis who wore tchelas? Any one of you?
No.
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 No Zaydis that we ever knew of wore tchelas. It happens that there were, we'll see in a minute, there were Hasidim of the Rajina Rebbe. Eleanor, are you descendant of the Rajina Rebbe? Somebody in the shul is related to the Rajina Rebbe. Who told me this now? Oh, you got to remember. Nobody on this phone call, huh? Eleanor, somehow I thought it was you. No, Michael Kelman, I think, is related. It was a descendant of the Rajina Rebbe. So he had what he thought was tchelas. Let me take a look. I'll take you to the website and my friend Ari Greenspan. And if you remember, he came to the shul probably around 15 years ago. So my friend Ari Greenspan has been involved in the resurgence of tchelas. Let's take us to the right one. Okay. They spent time on this. So the first thing is that we know that that tchelas was something which was known to the people, to Jews in Israel, and probably not as clearly known to the Jews who lived in Babylonia. And that's because it didn't actually. If you weren't a seafaring people, you were less likely to know what to do with it. Okay, let's take a look at this.
Yeah.
Who wants to read this part of the text? We'll read a few sections here. Greg, you want to pick this up?
Sure, happy to. The Mediterranean coast was the center of the dyeing industry in the ancient world. Syrian purple came from the port of Tyre, I believe, in Phoenicia, now southern Lebanon. The Phoenicians made their wealth trading in the dye stuff. Dye houses were ubiquitous in the region. Because of its lucrative nature, purple and blue dye slowly came under imperial control. Referring to the Romans issued edicts that only royalty could wear garments colored with these dyes. Only imperial dye houses were permitted to manufacture it. This apparently drove the Jewish techelet industry underground later with the Arab conquest of Eretz Israel. In 683, the secret of techelet was essentially lost, the dyeing process forgotten.
So this in one paragraph just tells you a lot about the history, that they simply, and the Gemara discusses it, that the Romans forbade common folk from wearing it. Royal blue, right, was probably royal blue. That meant that the people who weren't royalty weren't allowed to wear that color blue. I'm guessing that's probably the case in other countries. It's not simply a crayon issue, okay? So with this regard as well, it became something less common, and it also was a very expensive thing, as we'll see. So the dyeing process was lost, but also the identification of the chilazon was also lost to us. So let's take a look at this. The rediscovery. Let's pick this up over here. And Dan, you want to read for us from this bit from the Regina Rebbe?
There's an obligation upon all who are capable to search for the chazon in order to bring merit upon Israel with the commandment which has been forgotten for the last several centuries. And he who succeeds in this will surely will be blessed by the God of Israel. Rabbi.
So he became fixated on us trying to find this, and so he went after the teachings of this zoologist. Go on. In 1858.
In 1858, the French zoologist Henry found that 3 Mediterranean mollusks produce purple-blue dyes. One Mura trunculus was determined by him and other scientists, archaeologists, and historians to be the search of the ancient biblical blue. The same century, unaware of Kustuthius' findings, Rabbi Gershon Henish Lanier, the
Regina
Rebbe, set out on an expedition to search for the lost chilazon in a grand effort to restore Tehillah to the Jewish people. He was convinced that a certain squid fit the descriptions of the chilazon. However,
think about a squid. It does not come out in one. To say it comes out in 170 years means it's very secretive. It shies away from people. You hardly ever see it. What it means once in 70. It doesn't mean that once in 70 doesn't mean that there's a cycle that every 70 years it shows up. But it means it's a rare sighting of this thing. Okay. So he's convinced it was a squid. Go on.
However, unable to produce a blue dye from the black ink released from the squid, he turned to an Italian chemist who provided him with a method. Within 2 years, 10,000 of the Rebbe's followers were wearing blue threads on their tzitzits. The Rebbe published 2 books to counter the strong opposition from other Torah scholars who did not agree with the Rebbe's conclusions.
So he was on his own, the Regina Rebbe, but think how many he has 10,000 followers. It's a lot of followers, right? And they all the Rebbe's Hasidim were now wearing this squid dyed tchelis on their tzitzis. Okay, so now let's take a look at this next piece, which is really valuable. So who are we up to? Rick, how about you?
In 1913, the chief rabbi of Ireland, Rabbi Isaac Herzog, later rabbi of Israel, wrote a doctoral dissertation on the subject of Hebrew porphyrology, study of purple, a word he coined. When he sent samples of the Rajin Tehillah to chemists and dye experts for analysis, the dye was found to be inorganic, a synthetically manufactured color known as Prussian blue. Refusing to believe that Rav Gershon Henoch had purposefully misled his constituents, Rav Herzog studied the Rajina dyeing process. The truth soon became apparent. The process called for subjecting the squid ink to intense heat and then adding colorless iron filling to the mixture. This produced the blue color, which indeed appeared to come from the squid ink. In fact, under these conditions, virtually all organic substances would yield the same blue dye. The squid was not an essential component. The Rebbe had apparently been misled by an unscrupulous chemist.
Now, so the Razinas, by the way, still have not given up on their tcheles. If you go to Israel and you go into a store, you want to buy tcheles, and you find a less expensive tcheles, you are probably buying Raziner tcheles. Okay? Okay. Let's take this over here. Let's do a little more, and I can do that much on this. Okay.
So, Rabbi, since when do we just take on a new minhag? If this is it, if we've lost the minhag.
So hold on. Let's first learn this, then I will come back to your question a little bit. Okay, let's just see what the Pliny the Elder describes what you do. So Dennis, you want to read these two paragraphs, and we'll come back to you. Don't worry.
The vein is removed, and this salt has to be added. 3 days is the proper time for it to be steeped. It should be heated in a leaden pot with 50 pounds of dye to every 6 gallons of water. Okay. Rav Herzog knew of the work done by Lacaz Dutier and others, and realized that all the evidence pointed to Murex trunculus as the most likely candidate for the techeles. 2 problems, however, prevented Rav Herzog from positively identifying that snail with the chilazon. First, the dye obtained from the trunculus was purplish blue, not pure blue as tradition maintained. Second, the snail has an off-white shell with stripes of brown, hardly fitting the Talmudic description of the chilazon as appearing similar to the sea.
Okay. Might keep on going. Go on.
Current research has supplied the solutions to these objections. The shell appears off-white with brown stripes when it is out of the water, cleaned and polished. In its natural element, however, trunculus is covered with a coat of sea fouling the color of the ocean. Everything in its vicinity is covered with the same fouling, making it almost impossible to distinguish the snail from the seabed from which it is found. The Talmud's description is of the chilazon in its natural habitat.
Mm-hmm.
The riddle of producing a pure blue color from the snail was serendipitously solved. While researching the methods used by the ancient dyers, Professor Otto Eisner of the Schenkar College of Fibers noticed that on cloudy days, trunculus dye tended towards purple, but on sunny days, it was a brilliant blue. He found that at a certain stage of the dyeing process, exposure to sunlight will alter the dye, changing its color from purple to blue. The dye masters of old, working in the bright Mediterranean sunlight, this was certainly no secret.
So you can go to the shore, like especially to Dor. Dor is up not far from Haifa. It is a scuba diving area, and in the caves near Dor, they have found what were clearly old dying. There were snail catching and emptying caves where they would prepare for dyeing. And there are thousands, tens upon thousands, apparently, of Murex trunculus shells in all these places from going back thousands of years. And it is relatively evident that Murex trunculus is the source of tchelet, and the manner of making tchelet, as this describes here, to get to the blue that seems to be described, involves not only heat but sunlight as well that will cause it to the result that emerges. That is the premise upon which the whole tchelet, this organization, the Patil Tchelet, over here, right, which stands for the tchelet thread, okay, developed a process and has been producing tchelet now for 20, 25, 30 years, more than that, 30 years or so. You can go to their factory outside of Malei Adumim. And if you ever go in Israel to, what's it called? If you have gone with your children or grandchildren, it's where they take you to Eretz Breshit, it's called Eretz Breshit. And when you go to Eretz Breshit and Avraham meets you and you take a camel and you sit in Avraham's tent, it's very nice. I took my kids there one time. So Eretz Breshit is right next to Eretz Breshit is where their factory is, and tchelet is produced. Mimi asked a question about how do you renew a minhag. So the truth was there were those who felt uncomfortable with that. That if it was lost to us, then God intended to have it lost to us, and we have no right to try to refresh this minhag. Of course, the pushback is that if it's found to us, then you got to believe that God wanted it to be found to us. And so this was a matter of much debate. And you'll find that some of the great rabbis of our generation were not comfortable with doing it. One of my teachers, my great teacher, Rabbi Aaron Lindsay, never wore techelet, but he kind of backed off over the years in his opposition. Rav Schechter, Rav Tendler are techelet wearers. Of course, they disagree about what you're supposed to do with it. So everyone can see here, this is one of my talitot, and you can see, it's hard to get a full sense of the colors, right? But this would be the color of techelet. And what color would you call this?
Blue.
Blue.
Now, what color blue?
Kind of.
Depending on the quality of your computer screen and quality of my camera, right? But this is pretty much an indigo blue, right?
No, indigo blue would be darker.
It might. Right, there has a lot of shades of blue. This is kind of a good pair of jeans would be this color, okay? Good pair of jeans would be this color. So that's the techelet colors that we know of. Okay. So knowing all that, so why don't people have techelet? Why doesn't anybody wear techelet? Partially because of Mimi, partially because it's actually quite expensive. A set of tzitzis, that's the tzitzis themselves, can easily cost you $60, $70 for the tzitzis themselves. So there's some money involved, and so not everyone does it. I happen to wear my personal tzitzis. I also have in techelet, but when I bought for the kids, I didn't bother with that. Okay? So my talis and my,
It
go ahead.
depends on whether they go in the washing machine.
This is very color fast. It's not going anywhere.
No, but I'm just saying, if they go in the washing machine, they get all yucky. Anyway.
All tangled. That's when you need the special tzitzit protector plastic thing, which is actually really cool. That I'm serious. They take the tzitzit the strings and you wrap it around a coil and you put a plastic cap over it, and so it doesn't get all tangled up.
Ah.
It's a hell of a lot of noise when you're trying to go to sleep and the dryer's going though. So the plastic is clanking around. Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Why is it okay to use the dye coming from a creature that's not kosher?
That's a fair question.
They like the color.
So of course, it would not be something you're permitted to eat, but apparently it's something you're permitted to use. If you think about in the Mishkan, there were lots. First, they used techelet in the Mishkan. Think about, by the way, pause for a second. Think about our shul, old shul Aron Kodesh. So our shul Aron Kodesh was trying to pick up the biblical colors that were part of the Mishkan. You had a purple and a blue that were part of the Mishkan, and techelet ve'argaman are the colors, and was trying to pick up the colors that we have. But in the Mishkan also, they used skins. They used apparently dolphin skins.
Ooh.
So apparently to use things which might not be permitted to be eaten still seem to be okay. In this regard, again, what they use, you should just know how the process is done. They take the shell off, and they pretty much just press the glands to get out whatever oozes from the glands, and they mix it in, and they have large vats, and they involve sunlight, and that's how you produce it. But it is not necessarily something that you would ever think you would want to eat. Right, so most of our inks, again, most of our dyes do come from plants, but some of them come from inks as well. So we have a few more minutes. Let's just ask the question, what's the point? Why does the Torah tell you that you should have techelet on your garments?
Is this the same thing as with the Nachash, where if you put your hands up, or when Moses put his hands up, that you think of the sky, you look up to Shemayim?
It's a little different, but we can keep with that. Let's take one quick reference to this over here, and then we'll move backwards from it. Here, let's take a look at the Gemara Menachos, and this we'll stop. We'll read this and we'll stop, and then we'll go back again next week to sort of do a larger question. It's talking the Brisa. Okay, Eleanor, can you see that? You got it, Eleanor? You want to unmute. I'm unmuting you.
Okay, you can hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. It is taught in the Baraita that Rabbi Meir would say, what is different about Halek of all other types of colors, such that it was chosen for the mitzvah of ritual fringes? It is because Tehelet is similar in its color to the sea, and the sea is similar to the sky, and the sky is similar to the throne of glory, as it is stated. And they saw the God of Israel, and there was under his feet like a paved work of sapphire stone, and the like of the very heaven for clearness, indicating that the sky is like a sapphire brickwork. And it is written, the likeness of a throne as the appearance of a sapphire stone.
So the Techelet is a way that you can basically capture a color which is blue sapphire-ish and have you ultimately go think about the sky. So there is a crayon color, yes, sky blue, and it's probably like a lighter blue. What's the problem? And identifying this, what's the real challenge that you have about calling something the sky blue color?
It means a lot of different things to different people.
Different people and also
Different.
The sky changes its blue.
yeah. Depends on the time of day. It probably depends. Thankfully, right, the past 3 months of hell that we're all living in has enabled us to actually see the sky in ways we haven't been able to appreciate it for a long time in New York. Right? Have you walked out and felt that the sky, that the whole air, everything felt crisper to you?
Yes.
Because it has felt that way to me. Right?
Going on.
Pollution.
Right, the pollution's down, so finally have a sense of, a better picture of what the sky is like. So we still have light pollution, but in the daytime it's not a problem. But the blue of the sky changes depending on the time of day and the angle of the sun, and also what it's right it's reflecting off of, and even the discussion about the color of the ocean. We know the difference between going to let's say to the eastern coast of the United States, that ocean, and then going down to the Caribbean. And the color of the ocean depends on
Where you are.
yeah, it depends on the algae content and plant life there. All those things affect the color of it. So it's really hard to know exactly, but we're trying to have you imagine somehow the throne of God is what this says. We're going to stop here because 8:24. Next week, we're going to look more at the discussion about how the tzitzit is supposed to remind you of Hashem, or remind you of the mitzvot, and then a little bit more about what the obligations are. I just wanted you to, because I put it on today, I just wanted you to know that I'm wearing it. I'm wearing my woolies, as they call them. This is my wool tzitzit that I haven't worn in a long time. It's nice and yellow. And next week, if you remind me, I'll be wearing them again. We'll talk about why people might have worn these the way I'm wearing it right now versus underneath their clothes, but to be continued. Sound good, everybody?
That's terrific.
Okay. Rafi, good to have you on. You're all welcome on board in 5 minutes to the Lag BaOmer sing-along. That's
Okay.
really nice.
Okay.
Happy Lag BaOmer, everybody.
Yes.
Okay.
Bye.
Sameach.
Bye-bye.